So even they sabu can die. But they did nothing more and were done about their lives. Until when news came again that day is coming home, people did not ask how or ask when. Coming home meant burial. Burial meant gathering. And unfortunately, gathering for days so meant trouble, even if the owner of that trouble was no longer breathing. Preparations for his burial began slowly and carefully, like where people were handling a dangerous project. Even those who hated death, they wanted to see him buried properly. Not because they loved him, but because unfinished trouble was worse than finished trouble. Nobody volunteered eagerly or rushed to do anything. And then on the appointed day, the undertakers arrived from the city with confidence. So they were young, able-bodied men who had buried many bodies and seen many families cry. They believed death humbled everyone. Well, they did not know they didn't so their plan was simple. They would drive the body around the village according to their custom to allow people see him one last time, then proceed to the compound for burial. It was the routine which had worked many times before. Unfortunately, therein so did not like routine, not even in death. As the van entered the village road, the engine coughed once and the driver slowed down. "Bad foil," he muttered. The villagers exchanged looks but said nothing. They reached the first junction where the diversion should begin, and the driver turned the steering slightly, but the engine died. Complete silence. Everyone stood still. The driver tried again. The engine responded briefly, then stopped again as if it had been offended. They pushed the van to the side. The bonnet was open, but nothing looked wrong. There was no loose wire or smoke or smell. After some time, the engine started again smoothly. Relief passed through the crowd. It should be a coincidence, someone whispered. They moved again, but at the second diversion, where the road bent towards the market square, as the driver turned the wheel, the van jerked violently and shut down here and shut down. This time, everyone stepped back slowly. One old man sighed. The undertakers laughed nervously. One of them said, "These vehicles can be stubborn sometimes." Then somebody quickly replied like their owner. They waited again, and miraculously the engine restarted again without struggle. Someone suggested they should quickly continue. They drove straight for a short distance, then tried to divert again towards the river path, but the van refused. Smoke began to rise from the front. That was when fear entered everyone properly. An elder cleared his throat and said, "Young man, maybe you should go straight to his house. It is clear day, so doesn't want to roam around." The undertakers hesitated. Tradition was important, but so was safety. They decided to try one last time. The moment the wheel turned, the engine shut down completely without arguments. Everyone sighed heavily. A youth exclaimed loudly, "As even in death this man is still refusing road." Nobody corrected him. And then after a long silence, the eldest man present spoke up. "Take him straight to his house." The undertakers obeyed. As soon as they faced the road leading directly to Denso's compound, the engine started smoothly like a new car without shaking smoke or delay. People commented openly now. So the road also fears him. When the van reached Denso's compound, the air felt heavy. His house, which had always carried noise and shouting, now stood quiet, almost as if it was relieved. People gathered around just watching. The grave had already been dug. It was deep, clean, and waiting. They carried the body carefully and lowered it slowly. The men walked cautiously. Nobody rushed. Even the youths who usually joked during burials were quiet. The body touched the ground and nothing happened. People heaved a sigh of relief again. "Maybe it is finished finally," someone said. Then they began to pour sand. However, immediately the first shovel of sand entered the grave. The sand disappeared. People frowned. The second shovel went in next, but the sand sank as if it was swallowed. The third entered, and the same thing happened. Someone laughed nervously. Maybe the grave is too deep. They poured more sand, but the sand kept vanishing. The murmuring then grew louder. "This is not normal. Has anyone seen this before? Is the earth rejecting him?" The youth began to get angry and scared. Then their fear turned into frustration. One of them shouted, "Even now he's still disturbing us, not minding the charity we are doing for him." Another one replied, "He didn't even help anybody when he was alive. He didn't even pay us for this burial work, and he's frustrating us." Their anger took over, and they began throwing the sand aggressively. When it still sank, they then picked up stones and shouted, "If sand refuses, stone will obey." They threw stones into the grave, angry, adding insults too. "So this is how you are even in death. Wicked man, you think the ancestors will tolerate you? You have entered another land now. You better behave yourself. Eventually, the grave got filled forcefully. But as the last stone fell, the sky changed. Clouds suddenly started gathering, thunder rolled once, then again, then continuously, and then rain began to fall heavily, straight down without wind or warning, soaking everyone completely. No one ran or said anything. For 10 solid minutes, the thunder spoke without pause, as if something unseen was announcing an arrival. Then it stopped. Just like that, instantly the sky cleared. Birds returned and sunlight appeared too. People looked at one another in shock. An old man shook his head slowly. So Densu has reached the afterlife. Another elder replied, they will not today that Otosu has arrived in their territory. And nobody laughed out loud, even though they wished they could. They quietly dispersed, carrying their own observation and conclusion. That night, the village did not sleep properly. Some people lay on their beds, staring at the roof, replaying the burial again and again. Others pretended to sleep, turning from side to side, listening to sounds that had always existed but now felt different. The crickets chirped, the leaves rustled. Dogs barked once or twice and then went quiet as if they remembered something. Then around midnight, rumors began to move faster than truth. Someone claimed they heard footsteps moving around their compound, slow and heavy. That sounded like a man walking with purpose. Another person said the footsteps suddenly stopped at the village square and turned back. By morning, the story had grown legs. Some said the footsteps argued with the wind. Some said they heard a voice complain loudly and then stop. Nobody agreed fully with the story, but nobody dismissed it either. Neither dismissed it either. By the next morning, people gathered in small groups, not to gossip, but to confirm the fear. One man said his door shook slightly around midnight. A woman said her cooking pot fell by itself. Another man swore his radio turned on and off without him touching it. An elder who was close by cautioned them and said, fear also has legs. Be careful. Yet that same elder avoided passing near Denso's grave. After that, life tried to continue normally, but it was difficult. Farmers went to their farms, but returned earlier than usual. Women went to the stream in groups, never alone. Children were warned strictly not to play near the old footpath that was close to Day's compound. Even goats avoided grazing around that area. Also, people claimed whether it was true or not, nobody went to check. And then a week later, the youth who had thrown stones into the grave began to complain. One of them said his body felt heavy whenever he slept. Another one said he dreamt of arguing all night without seeing who he argued with. The third said he woke up angry every morning for no reason and fought his wife twice in 1 week. They secretly met and wondered aloud if they had offended something. An elder laughed dryly. You were angry, not cursed, but anger is also a curse. As such, sacrifices were suggested, not because anyone was sure, but because certainty had even left the village. One evening, they poured palm wine quietly, without drums or announcements. They just murmured words asking for peace, asking for forgiveness, and asking that trouble should not remain after burial. Nobody mentioned Diapu's name loudly. They only spoke around it. The way people speak around fire for a very long time. Dabu's house became the quietest place in the village, not because people respected it, but because nobody wanted to inherit trouble. Relatives avoided claiming it. They argued over farmland far away, but never mentioned that house. It stood there like a pet sentence. There was a day when a stranger passing through the village casually asked who lived in that house. The people looked at one another in shock. Someone finally replied, a man. That was all. At village meetings, arguments reduced. Not because people suddenly became saints, but because nobody wanted to remind the ground of how much it could swallow. Whenever discussions became heated, someone would cough and say, let us calm down, and everyone calmed down immediately. Children began to hear stories that were more like warnings. Don't behave like they sue. Don't argue with everybody. Peace is better than pride. Unconsciously, Densabu's name became a plague. Years passed. Yet whenever thunder rolled, someone would pause and look towards the old compound unconsciously, then laugh nervously and continue what they were doing. One evening, an old woman summarized this best while roasting corn by the roadside. She said, that man didn't change in life. Worse still, death did not change him either. It only relocated him. The woman seated beside her nodded. At least now he's no longer our problem. The old woman shook her head slowly. Maybe not, but he taught us something. What? The woman asked. The old woman sighed and said, "He taught us that stubbornness and anger do not die when the body dies. They are strong vices that can destroy even in death." From then on, the village never performed another burial the same way. They made sure to pour sand gently, speak carefully, and respect the dead. And then slowly, very slowly, peace returned to their village. However, behind them, the dinosaur's grave remained still, and his name continued to walk. This is Happy New Year to us. We made it into 2026. That is a big congratulation to us. I pray that 2026 be that year of rest for us. God's grace will supersede our efforts. We won't need to lose our flesh to get what we want. This year will be a year of wire, and it will be our best year yet. But while at it, please let's not be dating so to our family and friends. It doesn't pay to be troublesome and stubborn. Remember, our watchword this year is we will be peaceful and peace will be our portion. We will win silently and be free of regrets. Let's lift up our glasses to a new adventure in 2026. Besties again. We make 2026 worthwhile, full of fun, laughter, lessons, and sweet bond. Happy New Year, besties. I'll see you in the next story. Bye.